Yeah, you can't give that punishment. Yeah, so the purpose. So why do we have those deterrents there? Because the whole purpose of the system is to do what? Is to show mercy. Is to show compassion. You can only show compassion if you've got something very severe in the background, which is a possibility. And this is a feature of all of the had punishments and of qisas and all of these things. The same goes for the theft. So the punishment, like I said, the punishment for theft is cutting the hand as a categorical statement. No. It is a punishment for a particular type of theft in particular circumstances. Can you cut the hand of somebody who does embezzlement? No. Can you cut the hand of somebody who defrauds somebody? No. Can you cut the hand of somebody who extorts money from somebody? Don't know, extorts that they threaten them and then they take the money from them. You say, if you know, oh, you've got a nice shop here. You know, be a shame if it got run over. You know, people came in and they broke it up. You know, maybe I could protect it from you. It's called extortion. You can't cut somebody's hand off for that. Yeah, they'll still be punished under ta'ziyah, but that wouldn't reach the level of theft. If you go into somebody's shop and shoplift, yeah, you can't cut somebody's hand off for that. Yeah, if somebody steals food, yeah, or something which is perishable, yeah, something which can destroy by itself over time, you can't cut somebody's hand off for that. If it's underneath a certain value, you can't cut somebody's hand off for that. Yeah, the only time when it can happen is if you are literally breaking into somebody's house, or you're stealing some property from them when they are actively guarding that thing. Yeah? And with this issue of theft, the person who has been stolen from must be there to prosecute the case. So the state can't cut somebody's hand off unless the person who has been stolen from is there to prosecute the case. And it's not really in the interest of the person who was stolen from to prosecute the case. Especially if the person, so for example, I break into your house, I steal lots of jewels, I sell the jewels, take the money, have a great time, then I'm caught, brought forward the judge. What will happen? You prosecute it as a case of theft, and my hand is cut off, I owe you no compensation. I cannot be asked to give you compensation. All those jewels that you lost will not be paid back to you. Yeah? So is it in the interest of the person prosecuting the case? No. Yeah? And again, this is an opportunity for the person who's been stolen from to show mercy to the one who's been stolen from. So for example, if he decides, even after the punishment has been awarded by the judge, if he decides to sell the property that was stolen to the thief, or to gift it to him, punishment will be waived. Even once the punishment has been given, if the litigant, if the person who's been stolen from doesn't attend the place where the hand is to be chopped off to be a witness to it, it can't be chopped off. Yeah? So again, the circumstances are very, very limited. And so if we don't reach this level, and also, when the witnesses come, they have a choice. They can say, we saw that person steal it. And remember, there has to be two witnesses, eyewitnesses. If they didn't say, we saw him steal it, but we saw him take the goods, it will not be counted as a had case. We won't take that as a had case. That will be a case of ta'ziyah. Yeah? So the judge won't even look at it, even though exactly the same thing has happened, the person stole the thing, but if the witnesses don't use the word stole, then there can be no had punishment. The hand cannot be amputated. And again, we've got a whole range of doubts which are discussed by the Hanafi Imams, which can be raised. So for example, the thief can say, the property that I took is mine. And he doesn't have to prove it. He doesn't have to prove it. And so he can still be convicted for ta'ziyah, because once it's proven that it's not his property, even though he claims to have believed it was his property, he can be given a lesser punishment, but he cannot have his hand amputated. So, now remember, a Sharia society is not a society like today, where most of us are ignorant of 90% of the law. Why? Because the law is constantly changing, there's thousands of new regulations all the time, and that's why we have a special class of lawyers, who we pay lots of money to if we ever have to go to court. In a Sharia society, the Sharia is largely fixed. Certain things can change over time and in different places according to custom and things like that. But generally speaking, the main points are fixed. So before a person gets to court, they can just go and ask a mufti, well, what can be a doubt in this case? What can I say? People can protect themselves. These are not things that will not be just known by somebody who has studied, but the society in general will be aware of these kind of things. Intoxication. So there's a punishment in Islam for intoxication. What is the level of intoxication the person has to get to? The person has to, for the had punishment to be applied. The had punishment is 80 lashes. Corporal punishment. 80 lashes with a whip. What is the extent of his intoxication? The extent of his intoxication should be that he is not able to distinguish between a man and a woman. That is how intoxicated he needs to be for you to apply the had punishment to him. And in all of my years before Islam and after I entered into Islam, I have never met a person who was so intoxicated that they couldn't tell between a man and a woman, unless perhaps the man was dressed up as a woman or vice versa. Possibly. Okay? And again, there's all kinds of doubts that can be brought in. Was he drugged by somebody else? Did someone spike the drink? So many doubts that can be brought up about this particular thing. So moving on from the issue of had. So this is had. So if any of these things are not proven as had punishments, so we can't apply the had punishment. So the had punishment should be very, very rare. It shouldn't be happening every week or every month. Or twice a week, or a few people are being punished like this. It should not be happening. So what should be happening in majority of these cases, we can say 99.99% of these cases, is that a lesser punishment should be being applied. And one thing I didn't mention, which I should have mentioned, with regards to zina, according to the had punishment for zina, if the judge is convinced that the people who are claiming to be witnesses are in fact deliberately lying, they themselves will be subject to another had, which is called qazf. And qazf means is when you slander somebody. So you say somebody who's actually chaste, they haven't actually been having any kind of extramarital sexual relations, you've accused them, they themselves would be exposed to the had of 80 lashes. So it's a dangerous game to be playing. And the other result of that is that your testimony will not then be accepted in court. You will not be accepted to be a witness in court after that, if you are found guilty of that. So the majority of these cases will be punished according to ta'zir. So ta'zir is a discretionary punishment, and that can be, again, it can be corporal punishment, lashes, but never to the extent of a had punishment. So the maximum is 39, 39 lashes. Or it can be a fine. They can be fined, or they can be imprisoned, but only for a short period of time. Or there can be some other punishment up to the judge, depending on the time, the circumstances, the reality that they're living in. That is up to the judge, according to his ijtihad. And the judge should be a person of ijtihad. Not meaning ijtihad in the meaning of somebody like Imam Abu Hanifa, but somebody who's a follower of Imam Abu Hanifa, and he is such a scholar that he is able to use the principles of the school of the Imam and apply them in new circumstances. It's not just any person can be an Islamic judge. Not any alim who just graduates from a madrasa or any student of knowledge. It should be an alim of ijtihad. And if you don't have an alim of ijtihad, you need to have a panel of scholars. Yeah? You need to have a panel of scholars. This is Imam Abu Hanifa said this, so that you have enough people together where that level of expertise comes together amongst them. And according to the Maliki school, they also had a similar principle where they brought together a group of people. And this is, even some people say this is the basis of why we have the jury system, where you have 12 men. Yeah? Is based on a Maliki thing where they didn't have a person qualified to be the judge, so they bring together 10 or 12 of the best ulama from that community, and they would act as a council to try that particular case. Where have we got up to? Okay. Another aspect of penal law is what we call qisas. And qisas is really misunderstood by a lot of people. Qisas means retaliation. Yeah? Retaliation means what is famously known as an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, etc. Qisas, in the minds of some people, is what qisas came to replace. In the minds of some people, it is a blood feud. Yeah? Before the time of the Prophet ﷺ, amongst the Arabs, the blood feud was very, very common. So what would happen is, you have two groups, and we can say like, they're almost like gangs. So you can talk about like, which is familiar to you today, the Crips and the Bloods in America. Okay? So one person from the Crips, he kills another man from the Bloods. So instead of getting the guy who did the murder, they just kill anybody from his gang, his clan, his association, as revenge. Yeah? Because he is associated with that person. Yeah? And then again, they take revenge on that one. And this can go on for decades, even centuries, this constant blood feud. People, why? Because they didn't actually get the original murder in the first place. Yeah? So this is what qisas came to get rid of. And Allah subhanahu, it's very interesting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, He calls qisas evil. He says qisas is evil. He says the reward for evil is evil. And this is where we get the notion of a necessary evil. Sometimes you have a necessary evil. Something is not nice in society, but it is necessary. Why? Because when you have a person who is causing that fitna and fasad in the society, it destroys the whole fabric of that society. So somebody goes around attacking women, cutting off their noses, cutting off their ears. And it happens in some parts of the world even today. Yeah? Murdering people. Yeah? And he knows that if he gets caught, he's going to go to prison for 20 years, 30 years maximum. Maybe he'll get off time off for good behavior. He'll be out in half the time. Yeah? And what qisas does is that it puts the punishment in the hands of the victims. So if you come and you cut my nose off, and I take it to the court, and I have witnesses. You have to have two witnesses. You cut my nose off. I have a choice. Once the case has been proved, I have a choice. I can cut your nose off as retaliation. Or, I can take compensation from you. Yeah? Or, the third case is, I can forgive you. That's what I'm saying about severity. There's a severe punishment. But you have the option to forgive. Completely forgive that person. But what is the value of forgiving that person? I'm going to forgive you. If you don't have that severe punishment that you could be using against that person. Now people today, they criticize this system. They criticize the system because they say, well, what if somebody is very poor? If somebody is very poor and the person who has attacked them is very rich, they'll be more inclined to take the compensation. But again, this is to take that penal system out of context. We've already talked about the welfare system. So if the judge sees that a person is particularly poor and he's claiming against someone who's rich, the first thing the judge needs to do is get that person sorted out in terms of zakah. Make sure that person's debts are paid. Make sure that person receives the zakah so that he is not going to feel in need of taking that compensation money. That the decision is completely up to him. Because that person should be receiving zakah money anyway. Yeah? And the other thing about qisas is that it gives that right to the victims. You'll see again and again in this country and in other countries, people will complain and complain and complain. They do not feel they were given justice. Their brother, son, wife, husband was killed, and their killer gets 15 years and he's out in 7. They say, where is our justice? My husband's life is gone, my wife's life is gone, and that person still gets to walk around. So we should have the right. We should have that right to decide. And yes, capital punishment is a very severe thing because of course that ends that person's life. But the person, from our perspective, that person has forfeited that right by being a menace to society, by being creating that fitna in the society. But again, it's in the hands of the victim. Now, if the victim decides to forgive, yeah, but the government decides, yeah, so the Sultan or the governor or the Emir, he says, well, okay, you've forgiven him, but for the public safety, so for the benefit of the society, because this person is a known person, he goes around doing these type of things, he still has the option to imprison that person, or even to execute him if this has been there's been a spate of these cases all belonging to this one person. This is what we call siyasa. Siyasa, so there's another level of punishments which is at the discretion of the government in cases of very severe crimes. Yeah? Very severe crimes where the society as a whole is put in danger. Yeah? They have that discretion to imprison someone for life or even to execute the person if they are somebody who is causing fitna and fasad. So we have an example from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and this also gives the light about the question of zina. So one thing, another criticism of the zina punishment is that they say, well, if you need 4 witnesses for zina, for adultery, then how can a woman bring a case of rape? But the case of rape is not the case of zina. These are 2 separate offences. Yeah? A woman who is raped is not guilty of zina. So this is a defence in zina as well. If a woman says, I was forced, you can't touch her. You can't give her had punishment. You can't give her any punishment. She says, I was forced. Yeah? She may still need to prove that she was forced, that she was raped. And that's the same in this country. You still need to bring evidence. Yeah? And the evidence can be forensic evidence. It can be other evidence. Depending, because remember, where there is not a fixed punishment and there's not a fixed procedure, the judge has the right and the government has the right to lay down procedures and to set out punishments as they think is in the best interest of the society as a whole. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, a woman was on the way for Fajr and she was attacked and raped. And she called out after she was raped and the people came to her. They came to her assistance. Yeah? No one was saying, oh, let's go and take her and do the had punishment on her. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. No. They went through a list of names with her of people who were known to be people who cause this kind of mischief in society. They were habitual criminals. And when she attested, yes, it was this particular person, on the basis of this testimony, and this is one woman alone giving testimony, the Prophet ﷺ had that person executed. Yeah? So, the case of rape is not the same as the case of zina. And unfortunately, in some parts of the world, these 2 things have been confused by some people. And this is very problematic. But this is an example of a siyasa punishment, where a punishment is given by the government for the public benefits. It's not a fixed punishment, it's not a ta'zir punishment. Okay? So you have the fixed punishments which are for a small number of crimes. You have ta'zir punishments for where those are not, the evidence doesn't come up to scratch in those crimes, and any other crime that might be committed which is considered haram. And then you have the siyasa punishments which are there to do what? For the public benefits. Yeah? And of course that public benefit is determined by Sharia, by the Sharia values. Yeah? So protecting life, protecting wealth, protecting honor, protecting all of these things. Okay, the last thing that we're going to talk about today, and I know that, I don't know if we've gone over or whatever, no one's stopping me, so I'm just carrying on. If you want to stop me, please do stop me. Is the issue of Muslims living under a non-Islamic legal system, under a non-Sharia system. As we've just been mentioning, in the Islamic system, in the Sharia system, there is not necessarily a clear distinction between God's law and man's law. You know, so here people say this, bruv, this is wrong. The kufs, they've got the man-made law. I don't know why they call them kufs. Kufs are socks. Yeah. But this is how they talk. And we've got to get rid of the man law, and we've got to bring in Allah's law. But even within the Sharia system, we have what? We have the human mind doing ijtihad, analysing the text and deriving rulings from them. And also extending that law to places which are not mentioned in the texts. Yeah? And as we mentioned in siyasa, also the government has the right to deal with general principles established by the Sharia and bring in new laws. So for example, a Muslim government could say, well, for the public safety, people should wear seatbelts when they're in the car. For the public safety, they should go under a certain speed limit. Because this is to protect people's lives. You know, these things are not mentioned in the Quran, they're not mentioned in the Sunnah. But based on the general principle of protecting life, they can lay down this law. They can say, okay, we don't want to have any smoking in restaurants and whatever, because this is harmful to people's healths. They can say that. Yeah? So the idea that there's a clear, there's Allah's law here and there's man-made law here, and no, it's not exactly like this. And also we can give examples as well from the fiqh and also from the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, that there is a recognition that if you are in a non-Muslim land, the law of the non-Muslims should be recognized in that land. And the most clear example of this is the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. The Prophet ﷺ made a treaty with the Quraysh, the mushrikeen of Quraysh, about doing what? Making a peace treaty between him and them. And not just between him and them, because he made peace treaties with many other idol-worshipping tribes at that time. So, implicit in making a treaty with another government, which is not ruling by Sharia, is that you're recognizing that they have authority in that land, and that they have the right to apply their own laws. We may not agree with those laws. We may say, okay, well, these are not Allah's laws. They don't derive from the revelation that He sent. But at the same time, we have to respect that those are the laws of that land. And if you are living in a non-Muslim land, you are under a contract, you're under a social contract with those people. So they talk about this in the books of Sharia, that if you go into a non-Muslim land, they call it at that time an aman. An aman is like a trust, a covenant. Yeah? Then you should not behave treacherously with those people. And you should observe their laws. Observe their laws means as far as they if they are forcing you to not pray or something like that, you shouldn't be going and staying in those lands in the first place. So if you don't have any freedom of worship or whatever, you can't stay in that place for very long. You can only go as a tourist, as a visitor, a diplomat or whatever. But if you have that freedom to pray and fast and whatever, and fulfill those personal parts of your Islamic law, and you can do those things, then you should observe the laws of the land. Because ultimately, when you're in a non-Muslim country, the Sharia, the public aspects of Sharia, the laws of Islamic governance, cannot protect your life and property. They cannot protect your life and property unless, for example, there was a particularly powerful sultan and you were up for murder and you were going to be executed, and he came in and said, no, you can't execute him because he's Muslim, and he had that power to intimidate through his army or something. But the reality is, that's not going to happen for most people. It's certainly not going to happen today. Yeah. So your life and your property, that is governed by the rules of the land. Yeah, and you have to respect that. And if you break that contract that you have, yeah, being a citizen of the country, then you are going to be liable to the punishments of that country. And you can't say, well, I'm a Muslim, I'm only subject to Sharia. They'll just laugh at you. So this is not just from a Sharia perspective, but it's from a practical perspective. Yeah, you need to protect yourself. Okay, sure. Okay, so lastly, is it necessary for Muslims to live under Sharia? Yeah? Is it necessary for us to be advocating for Sharia here or abroad? So we have examples from the time of the Prophet ﷺ where we have communities, for example in Abyssinia, yeah, where they are living under a non-Muslim ruler, and they are not, and even when the non-Muslim ruler actually converts to Islam, neither is he required to apply the Islamic law in the public sphere, nor are they required to sort of try and demand that law. Yeah? Yet they lived perfectly happily, and we've had a Muslim community in Abyssinia, what's now known as Ethiopia, from that time until now. And as far as I know, there's never been a Muslim government there. Yeah? And you've had Muslim communities in sub-Saharan Africa, parts of southern India, Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, other parts of the world, where they have lived for hundreds of years in China without having an Islamic government. Remember, the foremost principle and the foremost objective of Sharia is what? Is to enable a person to have a good afterlife. That is the foremost principle of it. So it is not necessary for you to live under an Islamic government. Living under an Islamic government obviously makes life a lot easier. And it can protect people from oppression, though not necessarily depending on who is the ruler. Okay? Is it necessary for you and I to advocate for Islamic law in the Muslim world? Yeah? Is it a responsibility for us to establish Islamic law in the Muslim world? Again, no. You and I, our job is to save ourselves and our families from the fire. That is our job. People are held to account according to their ability. The Muslim rulers and the political class, the military class, the judicial class in the Muslim countries, this is their responsibility. It is their responsibility to apply Islamic law in the Muslim countries. And they will be asked about it. We won't be asked about it because it's not our responsibility. Yeah? Do we have a responsibility to have Islamic law in this country? Well, in terms of what we've been talking about in terms of government, again the answer will be no. But in terms of dealing with our own affairs, making sure that we have halal meat, making sure that our marriages and divorces are arbitrated properly. So if there's a dispute about divorce, etc., is this being dealt with properly? So we need to have our Sharia courts, our arbitration courts. Yeah, And that exists perfectly well with the existing British system. Because under British law, you can, instead of taking your case to court, and this is for anybody, it doesn't have to be Muslim or non-Muslim, you can take your case to an arbitrator. Yeah? And the arbitrator can use whatever system of law, or any system of ethics, or any system he likes, to make the arbitration. Yeah? So that is perfectly legal as it is. Yeah? And again, we need to have masajid, all of these kind of things. But do we need to advocate for Islamic law in this country? No, we don't. Yeah? If it came to a situation where we are the majority of the population, yeah, that's a different matter. Yeah? Then we might, because then even through the existing system we'd be the majority in terms of the ruling class and the military class and all these other classes. That's a different matter. But again, it would be the responsibility of those people. Okay, I think we've gone on for far too long, and I'm sure that some of you are bored and some of you have questions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us and guide us. Ameen wal akhir dawan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.